3.3 Day 1, we're looking at completing the square. So previously you have solved equations of the form u squared equals d by taking the square root of both sides. This method also works when one side of an equation is a perfect square trinomial, and the other side is a constant. A perfect square trinomial is one that factors into two identical factors, so a binomial squared. So we'll see some examples here. So steps to solving a quadratic using square roots. So step 1, we're going to write the left side as a binomial squared. So it's going to look like this, squared, x plus or minus something, and then squared. We're going to take the square root of each side, so we're going to solve by square roots and then solve for x, which we have done before. So example 1, we have x squared minus 16x plus 64. So we're thinking really about factoring it. So let me do this the long way first. This is what multiplies to 64 that adds to negative 16. Well, that is 8 times 8, but they're both negative. So this would be x minus 8 times x minus 8 equals 100. Notice that's just x minus 8 squared. So one way to kind of figure that out is that we're just taking the b value in here and dividing it in half, and that's the number that's going to go inside. So notice, negative 16 divided by 2 is a negative 8, which is what is in here. Okay, so that's like the short way of thinking about that. So this is x minus 8 squared equals 100. So now we can square root both sides to solve. So then this becomes, so the left side becomes x minus 8, and then square root of 100, remember that's plus or minus 10, it's perfect. Then we're going to add 8 to both sides, and so when we're adding 8, we want to put it in front of the plus or minus. So this means that x equals 8 plus 10, x equals 8 minus 10, so x equals 18, and x equals negative 2. So try out the same example. So we're not setting it equal to 0 this time. We're just writing the left side as a squared binomial and then solving by square root. So let me help you out here. So if you don't see it right away, let's just divide this by 2. So that is 2. So that's going to go inside. We just write x plus 2 squared. Again, if you're having a hard time seeing it, just factor it. 1 multiplies to 4. That adds to 4. That is 2 times 2. Okay, and this is 36. Then we solve by square roots. Okay, and hopefully you can finish from there. And please try number 2 and 3. So we tried this out. You would have gotten x equals 4 and 2, and x equals 20 and 2. And then this first one is 4 and negative 8. So just to kind of take a look at this, so this factors to x plus 4 squared. This factors to x minus 3 squared. This factors to x minus 11 squared. Okay, square root of 121 is 11. So you can look at it that way as well. And then you have to remember the sign of negative. So in example 1, the expression x squared minus 16x plus 64 is a perfect square trinomial because it equals x minus 8 squared. Sometimes you need to add a term to an expression x squared plus bx to make it a perfect square trinomial. This process is called completing the square. So completing the square for the expression x squared plus bx, what we're going to do is we're going to add b over 2 squared. In each diagram, the ones below, the combined areas of the shaded region is x squared plus bx. So here's x squared, here is bx. What we want to do is we want to make a physical square. This is a rectangle right now. So how you do it is you cut the b's in half. So notice I cut it in half and put it on the side. Then I need to add some 1s over here. So what happens is we're adding b over 2 squared to complete the square, to complete the square in here. So algebraically, this looks like x plus bx plus b over 2 squared. Then we factor it. So it's x plus b over 2 times x plus b over 2, or we rewrite it as a squared binomial, x plus b over 2 squared. Now, if this seems confusing, I know it looks a little different because there's a lot of variables in here, so let's go ahead and try some examples. We're going to go ahead and find and make a perfect square trinomial. Find the values of c that makes the expression a perfect square trinomial. Then write the expression as a square of a binomial. So what we're doing is we're setting up to complete the square. So these are the steps to make a perfect square trinomial. We have x squared plus 14x plus c. So what we're going to do is find half of the coefficient of x. Okay, and that is our b value. Okay, it's the 14. So we're going to take 14, we're going to divide it by 2. So whatever sign it is, it's positive 14. And so that's going to equal 7. So the next thing I'm going to do with that 7 is I'm going to go ahead and circle it. That'll be a nice important thing for us for later on. So step 2 says to square the result of step 1. So we're doing a square, so squaring it. And so 7 squared is equal to 49. Then we're going to replace c with the result of step 2. So the original equation is x squared plus 14x, and then our c is this 49 right here. Then we're going to rewrite as a squared binomial. So we're going to factor it. So just right now, let's just factor it. So it multiplies to 49 that adds to 14. Well, that is positive 7 and positive 7. So that is x plus 7 times x plus 7. Notice I could write that as x plus 7 squared. So that is the squared binomial. Now what I want you to notice is this 7 that we circled, that went directly inside of here. So we don't have to think about factoring right here. This is 7. It just goes inside. Whatever sign it is, we have to make sure that's there, and then we square it. So let's go ahead and try one more example. Let me try one with you without all of the words. Find the values of c that makes the expression a perfect square trinomial, then write the expression as a square of a binomial. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 8 and divide it by 2. It's a positive 8, so positive 8 divided by 2, that is 4. Then I'm going to circle it. And then the next thing I do is I square it. 4 squared is 16. So that's going to go where my c is. So x squared plus 8x plus 16. That is c. Then I factor it. So this becomes x plus, and now that's the 4, x plus 4 squared. Okay, so I'm done. So I placed c, and then I found the perfect, then I wrote it as a squared binomial. So please try 5 and a. Okay, if you try this out, this first one, you divide -2 by 2, you get -1. I circled it, then I squared it. -1 squared is positive 1. So I replace that with c, x squared minus 2x plus 1. Then I factor it, it becomes x, and whatever number I circled, minus 1 squared. Then I have x squared minus 6x plus c. So I take -6 divided by 2, that's -3. I square it, it becomes a positive 9. So I replace the c with that 9. Then I write it as a squared binomial, x minus this 3 squared. And we're done.